Good morning, everyone. Hello, all. So, we're going to start off with today's session. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Let's meet. Let's wait for 2 more minutes for other people to join, and then we'll begin with today's session. Okay, so let's start off with today's session. So, today we'll be discussing. Uh, so, if you guys can remember, today I gave you some questions to convert a while loop to a for loops, and which will help you to understand how for loops are used mainly in Python or data analysis. And then we'll discuss some questions on lists and dictionaries that are basically generally asked in Python coding interviews. So if you are applying for particularly data analysis role using SQL and Python, the first round will be probably a coding round or a coding interview where they will be asking you to code in Python or SQL just to check if you are decently proficient in these very technologies. So with that note, let me start off with sharing my screen. Okay. So so tomorrow yesterday we created a program of calculating a factorial of a particular number using while loop. So now let's do it. Now let's solve that particular program with the help of for loops. Okay, cool. Cool. So let's create a function. As I told you yesterday that if you are creating any code snippet, for example, you have to read a CSV file and your team lead asks you to remove all the none values. Okay, so you don't just open Jupyter notebook and start blindly start coding. You have to create a function. Okay, so it is a really very good practice for you to not only this assignment but all of the assignments you have to create it using a function, because creating a function looks like you have written the code in a very organized way, and the person who is having the look at the code creates a very good first impression. Okay, so let me start off with creating a function. It is going to accept the number as an argument. What I'm going to do is create a for loop. Guys, I hope my screen is available. The screen is visible. Just quickly give me a thumbs up in the chat. Cool. Let me calculate the factorial of 8. Okay, let me check if it is 40,320. Cool. So what I've done in this particular code, I have iterated through starting from 1 to number plus 1, which means that if I'm inputting 8, so I'm gonna iterate starting from 1 and end it up to 8. So if I run this particular code, what I've done is number plus 1. So if I do 1 comma 8, it is going to print numbers only up to 7. And as you know, factorial, if you want to calculate the factorial, it starts from 8 into 7 into 6 up to 1. So that's why I have done it as number plus 1. So it is going to iterate starting from 1 and ending up to 8. Okay. Then what I've done is I have initialized my fact variable as 1, and then I have multiplied the I values, that is 1 up to 8, with the variable fact 1. So the step that we use to calculate for calculating the factorial, that is 8 into 7 into 6 and up to 1. So that this particular step is performing, we are performing that particular step here. Cool. So let's quickly solve that prime number program with the help of for loops. So what I'm going to do is, let's create a function once again. Initialize flag is false, and then two comma number. Number mod I. Now let's print. So in this case also, I have started my iteration from 2 to the particular numbers. For example, I have to calculate if a 7 is uh, prime number or not. So I'm going to start off my iteration with 2 and end it up to 6, because every number is divisible by 1 and the number itself. So that's why I have started this particular iteration from 2 and the number that I am going to calculate. And then I've checked if the number is particularly divisible by I, that is my number starting from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If that particular number is divisible by if that particular number is divisible by I, which means the number mod I. So basically modulus operator returns me the remainder of the division operation. So if I'm going to do 10 mod 2, it is going to return me 0. Okay. If that number is divisible by I, that is the iteration number index, I'm gonna set flag as true. And then, as you know, in here in this particular code snippet, I've done a flag equals to, you can also write that if flag equals to true, number is not prime, else number is prime. In case of Boolean operation, suppose if your the variable inside your if statement is a Boolean, you can just write simply if flag, and it is going to work in the same way as flag equals to true. Cool. So why I'm telling you guys, because in some of the interviews they might ask like solve this particular code problem with the help of while loops, and what will be your approach if you are solving this particular problem with the help of for loops. Okay, cool. Any questions in this particular two codes? Any questions? Yes, no? Okay, cool. Okay. So we are going to today we are going to, along with some basics of pandas, we are going to discuss few questions that might be asked in the Python data analysis interview, because companies, if you are particularly looking for Python data analysis, they expect you to be good in inbuilt data structures of Python, namely tuple sets, dictionaries. So it is highly advised for you to keep on practicing these dictionaries, or all the list all the list operations, sets, tuples, where we use list, where we use dictionaries, where we use sets. Okay. So our problem is that the question is, consider this dictionary of address. We are having a dictionary. We want to extract the phone number. Okay. So here in this particular dictionary, we have our key as string, and then we are having the values as list. And then list particularly contains the city name, the area name, and the contact number for that particular office. Okay. So what our job is to extract the phone number, the contact number from each of these entries. So let's start off coding this particular problem. What I'm going to do is, first I'm going to iterate in this particular dictionary. So for example, I'm going to type for I in dictionary, and then let's print I. Cool. So if you do apply for loop in dictionaries, it is going to print you the key values, the key names by default. And if I'm going to do dict address of I, it is going to return you the values. Okay. So now let's see the type of it is a list, and also it must be in. Okay, cool. So the values corresponding to each and every key in this particular dictionary is a list. So now our job is to iterate through all of these lists and extract these particular contact numbers. Okay. So here in this particular case, in case of Hyderabad and Singapore, the phone numbers, the corresponding value of the PH value is at the last. So we know how to print the last value of any list. What I'm going to do with -1, and it is going to print me the last value of each and every list. But as you can see in the second value, in the second entry of this particular dictionaries, the last value is a pin, not a phone number. Okay. So here, this particular logic is currently successful in this first and second entries, first and third entries, but it is failing in the second entry. So we need to decide a new logic. So what we can do is get the index of these pH values, and the value just next to this pH is our phone number. So if anyhow we can get the index of this particular pH and pH values, we can easily get the value of this particular phone number. Let me tell you how we can do this. So if you guys can remember, I told you about a function which was index. So for example, I'm having this particular list as dictionary underscore address of office. It has returned me is list. So if I apply a dot index function, and let's see what all parameters this index function actually expects from me by clicking shift tab. Okay. Okay, my shift button is actually not working. So it is going to expect you the number that you want to search. You can also Google some stuff about this particular function. So as you can see, the list index method can take a maximum of 3 arguments. First, it starts with element, the element that you have to search, and start and end. These are optional arguments. So if you want to search your element starting between an index, suppose 1 and 3, so you can just simply apply these particular arguments. Okay. So let me supply the particular argument for index function. I'm going to do pH. And this is stored at my third index. Let me just print this particular once again output. So as you can see, 0, 1, 2, 3, the pH, this particular pH value has been stored at my third index of this particular list. So I just simply want the next value of this particular index. What I'm going to do is +1. If I'm going to apply +1, it is going to return me 4. Let me quickly check if this particular logic is working fine. It has returned me the corresponding phone number. So now what I'm going to do is apply this particular logic in my inside my for loop. So what I'm going to do is the address of I dot index of ph plus 1. And now I'm going to just simply supply the index, and it is going to return me the phone numbers for all the office addresses, for all the address. Any doubts or question in this particular problem? Any questions? Yes, no? Okay, cool. So these are the basic functions, basic problems that you can solve with the help of dictionaries. Okay, let's move on to another function, another problem. Write a function which takes input n and q and returns the sum of qth power of first n natural numbers. So what he's expecting from us is that if we supply, for example, I have created a function and I have supplied n equals to 10 and q equals to 2. So what he's expecting from us is that we have to return the sum of first 10 natural numbers if all these particular elements are squared. Okay. So if I'm gonna, instead of q equals to 2, I'm gonna provide q equals to 3. So we need to calculate the sum of first 10 natural numbers if all of these particular numbers are cubed. Okay. So here in this particular case also we are going to create a function. Here equals sum is going to expect us n and q. And here in this case we are going to perform list comprehension. If I want the first 5 natural numbers and all of them must be squared. Okay. So these types of problems always occur because the name of our function is sum, and we also have a particular function inside list which we can, with the help of which we can sum all of its corresponding elements. If I'm going to do 1 2 3, it is not going to work. So if you are, say, facing such type of issues, such type of problems, what you can do is just restart this particular kernel by clicking this particular uh, button, which looks like a refresh icon. Restart the kernel with dialog. Now I'm going to click on refresh, restart. So, and then let's rename this particular sum function up to sum underscore one. So now let's execute this function once again. So it has summed all the first five natural numbers if they are squared, and the sum will be 55. You can also prove this particular answer mathematically by just summing up first five natural numbers, just square them up and just add them and pick out the answer. Okay. Any questions in this particular problem? Any questions? Yes, no? Any questions, guys? Am I audible? I'm sure. Rishabh, you don't have any questions, or am I not audible? Okay. I am audible, but you're not having any questions. That good. Cool. Okay. So let's solve our last problem of our day, and then we are going to discuss pandas. Let's create a. Okay. So the problem statement is find out all the numbers between 1 to 100 which are divisible by either 3 or 5, but not by both. Okay. And one more thing, guys. First of all, if you are writing your code in any of the interview, you must make sure that your code is highly optimized, because there might be two cases. First, like if you are having any uh, interview and there will be first round where they will be extensively asking Python and SQL, or in the first round itself, which will be a technical discussion or a technical interview round, they will be asked you will be asked you to share your screen and start some coding on Python or SQL. Okay, so you have to make sure that your code is highly presentable and it should be highly optimized. Just try to make your code as easy to understand, as optimized as it can be, and it must be as short as you can make it. Okay, because no one likes to read 10 to 20 lines of code. And trust me, in my past experience, I have seen people writing codes up to 300 to 400 lines. The code is working fine, but the code is not structured. So make sure your code is structured, highly structured. And because at the end of the day, you will be having a look at your code, and you must understand what all things your code is doing. Okay. So let's create a list. I'm gonna start off with list comprehension. Okay, 1 200 which are divisible by 3 or 5, but not that. So mm, okay. So that's an OR gate, and what I can do is it has returned me a list of the numbers which are divisible by 3. It has returned me a list of numbers which are divisible by 3 or 5. And it has returned me also the list of numbers that are divisible by 3 and 5 both. So what I'm going to do is if y mod 15 not equals to 0. Now let's have a look. Okay, y is not defined. Okay, cool. Hmm. So guys, here in this particular question, what we were asked to do was that from all the natural numbers between 1 to 100, what we were asked to print all the numbers that were divisible by either 3 or 5, but not by both. So as you saw in my previous code, what I was doing is I have created a list inside a list. Okay. So what I can also do is that I can create a list of all the numbers that were divisible by 3 or 5 both. So instead I used to decide, okay, let's create a list inside this particular list comprehension so that I don't need to create another list and assign some memory location to that particular list. Okay. So what I did is I created a list inside this particular list comprehension. So what was the issue with this code was that uh, it was returning me numbers which were divisible by either 3 or 5, but the requirement was that I should not include numbers in that particular list that were divisible by 3 and 5 both. So the numbers which are divisible by 3 and 5 both are probably multiples of 15. Okay. So what I did is I created an extra condition over here, and it returned me all the numbers. So with the help of this particular condition, I was able to exclude all the numbers that were divisible by 3 and 5 both. So let's check if these numbers contain. So the particular mult function called mult list should not contain any element. Cool. Yeah, the Jupyter notebooks will be shared in the Skype group itself. So don't need to worry. No need to worry about that. For now, if you are having any questions in these problems, you can just type them over the chat. Pretty basic questions. I thought of discussing it with you because these questions might be asked in your interviews. If you're having any questions, then please let me know. Uh, okay, so all the Jupyter notebooks will be uploaded in the dashboard. No need to worry about that. If you want me to upload in the Skype group, we can also do that. Okay. So as of now, for now, if you're having any doubts in these questions, you can just type them over the chat. So if you're having any questions, you can type them over the chat. Till then, I'm gonna quickly grab some water. Oh, okay. So the question came is that why we are dividing it by 15. So why we need to check if it is divisible 15 or not? Because our requirement is we must include all the numbers that are divisible by 3, by either 3 or either by 5, but we should not include the elements which are divisible by 3 and 5 both. Okay, so as you can see, the number which are divisible by 3 and 5 both are probably the multiples of 15. Okay, so if you can have a look, like for example, 75 is divisible by 3 and 5 both. 5 into 15 is equals to 75, and 3 into 25 also equals to 75. So it is divisible by 3 and 5 both, and at the same time it is divisible by 15 as well. So I'm going to do 75 by 15, which is going to return me 5. Okay, that's why we are checking if the number is divisible by 15. Okay, I hope I've cleared the query. Yes, no. Okay, so yeah, the Jupyter notebooks will be made available in the dashboard. No need to worry about that. And let me quickly start off with pandas. Like today we are going to cover basics of pandas, what all import modes are available in pandas, how you can import basically, how you can import and read CSV or Excel files. Trust me, it is as easy as you were importing Excel and CSV files in Power BI. I'm going to create a new Jupyter notebook. Okay, so first of all, if you are importing, if you are using any particular library, the first step comes is that you have to import that particular library into your Jupyter notebook or the environment where you are coding, may it be a Python file or any other thing. So I'm going to start off with importing my pandas library. And once again, I'm going to tell you guys that if you are using Anaconda environment and your machine, there will be a lot of libraries, for example, NumPy, Pandas, Scikit-learn, Matplotlib that will be coming with the Anaconda environment as handy with as a handy, because Anaconda is particularly for if you are working in analytics or any machine learning stuff, you got to have the Anaconda environment set it up in your machine. So let's quickly start off by creating a data frame, and then I'm going to discuss what is the difference between a data frame and a series. I'm going to also use NumPy. So in the last lecture, we discussed what is a how we can use numpy.arange, np.arange. Now it's working. Shift tab. Now it's working. I don't know what that happened. Okay, I'm gonna provide my first element and last element, and I'm gonna reshape it to, for example, 5 rows and 4 columns. Good. So here is my data. Suppose this particular data came from a CSV file. So I'm going to create a data frame on top of this particular data frame or data. So for example, data underscore frame, I'm going to use pd dot data frame. Okay. So what I've done is that first of all, I created my data with the help of np.arange function, and I've reshaped it that particular data to 5 rows and 4 columns. Now with I've created a particular data frame with the help of pt.dataframe function. So what this particular function expects from us is that, and have a look. It expects me data and data. It expects me index and it expects me columns. Okay. So I have provided him the index as my R1, R2 up to R5, and I've provided columns from starting from 1 to 4. If I do C5, what it's going to do? Quickly tell me, guys. We discussed that particular problem in yesterday's class. Just quickly tell me what it's going to do. Will it successfully run or will it be throwing me an error? Just tell me, guys. A quick question. Okay. Any more answers? Yeah, it is going to throw me an error because the question is previously we did columns as C1, C2, C3 up to C4, and if now I add it as C5, what it's going to give me? Okay, so a lot of you are correct. It is going to throw me an error because the shape of my array is 5 rows and 4 columns, and here in this particular case, what it's going to do is it is going to create index for 4 rows, 5 rows, and it is going to create in columns of 5 columns. So here in this particular list, I have provided 5 columns instead of 4. So the original dimensions of my array is 5 rows and 4 columns. So it is going to throw me an error saying wrong number of items passed, 4 placement implies 5. So if you look at this particular error, shape of passed values is 5, 4. Indices imply 5, 5. So I'm gonna remove this particular C5, and it is going to successfully run. So this is a particular data frame. So data frame is simply a collection of series, you can say. So what's a series? Series is basically if I want to start indexing through this particular data frame, what I'm gonna do, and if I return the type of this particular, it is going to print me a series. So as in list dictionaries we perform, and even in arrays we performed indexing with the help of indexing, traditional indexing that starts from 0 and ends up to the length minus 1. In the case of data frames, what we are going to do is we are going to index it with the help of its columns. Okay. So let me, yeah. If you want to extract the data belonging to a particular column, and the extracted data will be a series. Okay. If you want to extract data from more than one column, you can do it like this: C1, comma C3. So it is going to return you the data from the specified columns which you have specified. Are there any questions till now? Okay, cool. So, cool. So I hope everybody understands the difference between a series and a data frame. So a data frame is actually a collection of series, and a series, if you want, is the thing that we get after indexing through the data frame with the help of its columns. We have also a function which is called as lock. If you want to start indexing with rows. Previously, we started our indexing with columns. So if you want to index with the help of column, just simply type the column name inside the square brackets, and it is going to return you series. And if you want to access the elements of a particular row, what you can do is we can do data frame.loc. Now let us have a look at the type of this particular data. It must be a series. Okay. We also have a attribute which is called as data frame.iloc. So with the help of iloc function, iloc attribute, what you can do is if you want to access the particular data of your data frame with the help of some indexes, what you can do is you can use iloc. And suppose in this particular data frame, I want all the data starting from the first index. So I'm going to simply do 1:. So it is going to return me all the data starting from the first index, that was R2, and it is going to print me all the values up till R5. And here in this case also, if I want all the columns starting from C2 ending up to C4, what I can do is 1:. So it is going to, it has basically omitted the first row and the first column. Okay. So now let's just start off with importing a CSV or an Excel file. So what I'm going to do is creating a new data frame. data underscore CSV. If you want to read data from your CSV file, you have to use pd.read CSV. And let me check if I'm having any CSV files in my directory. Yeah. And let me print this particular data. It has returned me all the contents of that particular CSV file. So CSV file stands for comma separated values, as you all know. Sometimes the CSV files are not actually comma separated, but indeed they are. So what you can do is, if your CSV file does not contains any kind of comma separation, and sometimes it contains separation as semicolon or colon, so you can simply use SEP attribute of read underscore CSV function and provide whatever your separation is. So here in this particular case, if I provide a semicolon, what it has done is it has what all data was separated by any semicolon, it has particularly included it to a single row. If you want to know the dimensions of this particular data frame, what you can do is data.shape, and it is going to return you the particular dimensions in the form of rows and columns, rows comma columns. So but as of now, our data contains 1328 rows and 6 columns. One more question comes in our mind is that if pandas is having any data limits. So the answer is it is not having any data limits. Particularly, it depends upon your computer, your machine's capability to extract the large data. If you are having any good computer or a good laptop, you can easily import files up to 1 lakh or 5 lakh or 6 lakhs rows, and you will be able to create perform some operations on top of that particular data, provided if your computer is having the capability to import such large data. Okay. We can also have a look at what all, if you want to have a look at what all, if you want to basically have look at first 100 rows, you can just simply type data underscore CSV dot head. By default, it shows you the top 5 rows. And if I provide data dot 100 of data dot head of 230, it is going to return me 230 rows, and the number of columns will be same. Okay. You can also do data.csv and do data types, data underscore csv dot d types, where it will be returning you the data type of each and every object or of each and every column. So the by column is an object. So particularly if in pandas data frame, the object data type is basically a string. So if I'm gonna print date of 0, it is a string. If I have a look at this particular time option, it is also a string. So basically, wherever you see a data type as an object, it will be a string. No need to worry about that. Okay. You can also use data.describe, and it is going to give you the details of what all numeric data types are there. So for example, in our data frame, in our particular data set, we have only the only data type that we are having as an integer or as a number we are having as no. So it has returned me all the basic statistical information. So the count is 1,328 rows. Its mean is 5.77. Standard deviation is 17.41. The minimum value is 0.00. The 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile are 1, 2, and 5 respectively. So folks who might have given competitive examinations such as CAT or GATE might be aware of this particular definition. So 25th percentile is basically, for example, the 25th percentile is 1. So below 1, 25% values can be found. 25% of data can be found, and below 50th percentile at that particular value, 50% of the data can be found below that particular value, and so for 75th percentile. Okay. And it has also returned me the maximum value of that particular column. I hope pandas is clear up till now. If you are having any questions, you can type them over chat. Any questions? Yes, no? Any questions, or shall I proceed further? Okay, cool. So in the read underscore CSV function, what I have done is I have provided the path of the Excel file in my function. So what do you guys think, if it will run successfully, or will it be throwing me an error? The question is, in my read underscore CSV function, I have provided the path to an Excel file. Will it run successfully? Will it import the data from the Excel file, or will it be throwing me an error? Okay, Neelam and Rishabh says error. What about other guys? Okay, let me run this particular code, and it has returned me an error. Let us see what this error is about. Expected one fields in line 3 and sort 2. Okay, let me open this that particular Excel file and see. The error is error tokenizing data. Expected one fields in line 3 and sort 2. So let me have a look at this. The error is expected one fields in line 3 and sort 2. Let us try with this. So it is still throwing me an error. Let me try another separation. So what you have to do is simply, instead of read underscore CSV function, you can simply do read underscore Excel. Now, as you can see, if I just type READ and hit type tab, you can see a lot of read functions: read clipboard, read CSV, read Excel, read feather, read JSON, read pickle. As of now, we'll be focusing mainly on read CSV and read Excel. Mainly in companies, if the particular person is performing EDA or some sort of analysis, chances are 95% chances are that he or she will be working on only these three options, namely read CSV, read Excel, and read JSON. Now, read JSON option will be discussed in further upcoming session, and as of now, we'll be using read Excel. And now I'm gonna provide the path of my Excel file, and it has run. So now, as you can see, I have imported all the data from my Excel file. what all operations you performed on these data frames you can also perform on so on these data frame also. So the thing is it doesn't really matter if you are importing data whether from CSV file or Excel file or JSON file. You can always perform all these types of functions because at the end of the day it is a data frame. So I'm gonna click type of data underscore Excel. It is going to return me a data frame. Okay. And now if I do describe on this particular data, it is going to return me this basic statistical properties of these season columns and viewers in millions column. One more important function is that if you want to export your data frame, for example, this particular data frame, you can also export this particular data frame with the help of two CSV function and just provide the name of this CSV file, for example, sample.csv. Let me open that CSV file. So this is how our CSV file looks like. You can perform some operations on that. So dot to CSV function is really very important if you are particularly working on data cleaning operation as an analyst, as a data analyst, because you have to import data from your CSV file, perform some operations or cleaning on top of that, and just simply create a CSV file on top of that. You can also import that particular data frame where in which you have performed all sorts of data operations into your SQL Server database also. Okay. Where were we? So now let's look at some attributes of pd.read CSV function, read Excel function. So suppose you want to import only few columns of your particular data set. So what you can do is use calls function and just simply provide what all columns you need to import in the form of a list. Suppose I want to import season, import episode, and viewers. Now if I do data underscore Excel, it has imported only three columns, namely season, episode name, and viewers in millions. Okay. You can also have a look at if your column contains categorical values, you can have a look at what all unique values are present in that particular column with the help of unique function. So let me have a data type of that particular. It is a NumPy array. Okay. And if I want to know how many number of unique values are there in that particular column, I can simply type data underscore Excel of episode name dot n unique. It contains 67 unique values. You can also have a look at what all value counts are there. For example, if I want to have data underscore Excel of season dot value counts, it is going to return me how many number of that particular value is present in that particular column. For example, season 7 is present 7 times. Season 6 is present 7 times. If I do episode name, it is going to print me how many times Book of the Stranger contains values, and so on and so forth. So what if another requirement comes is that you want to import seasons and viewers in millions as strings. So what I can do is just simply type d type and let me give all my requirement as a dictionary. And now as you can see, my season column is having values as strings. Okay. And if I want to have a look at the data type of viewers in millions, I can do. If we can do that in, yeah, D type O, which is basically stands for object. So the previously I was having an error. I was providing the object as capital O. It gave me an error. Capital O object does cannot be understood. So I just did it to lowercase one, and it returned me the required value. Okay. So any questions till now for pandas? Any questions while importing data frame, while importing data frame with the help of some attributes? Any questions? Any questions? Yes, no? Okay. So D type is basically the attribute value. If you want to repeat, if you want to know the data type of a particular column, so what I can do is simply type. So if you want to repeat the data types of all the columns present in your data frame, what I can do is simply do data underscore the data frame dot t types. It is going to return me the corresponding data type of each and every column in my data set. Okay. So in the my data underscore CSV data frame, I'm having by, date, location, species, and time as my object, and only NO column is my this thing, integer or numeric, we can say. And now, if I want to have a look at the data type of a specific column, what I can do is simply type location, the column name, and it's going to return me the data type of that particular column. Now, one more requirement comes is that if I want to read my data frame and where it is, yeah. One more requirement comes that if I want to read my data frame and at the same time I want to convert the data types, read this particular season object, season column as my string, and use the viewers in millions column as my object. So what I can do is simply type d type equals to, and I'm going to provide all my requirement in the form of a dictionary. So I want the season column to be read as object, and viewers in millions columns I want to read it as an object itself. So what I can do is d type and use season and viewers in millions as keys of this particular dictionaries, and the data type as its values. And now if I execute this particular code, I can do season dot d type. It returns me the d type as object. Okay. The query is clear. Okay, cool. Any more questions? So Jupyter Notebook find the files with the help of the file path that I'm providing in that particular function. So as of now, my file was in the same directory as my Jupyter notebook. So I was just providing the name of the file. So if I want to sample data, let me do. Okay. So what I did is like just simply type the name of my CSV file because it is was in the same directory as it was in as my Jupyter notebook file. Okay. So in the next class, so in the next class I'll discuss if your uh, if your Jupyter notebook is in suppose desktop and your CSV file is in downloads or documents. So we have a thing which is called as dynamic this thing uh, dynamic file directory. So we'll discuss it in the next class, and yeah, it will be much more easier to read that particular file because it won't be any making any sense to provide the full path. For example, C users, machine name, downloads, stuff like that. We can use dynamic file directory, and also it is advised for you to keep your data files in a separate folder, and that folder must should be in the same directory as the Jupyter notebook. Okay. Yeah. uh any more questions? So why I typed the only the file name, because the file made the CSV or Excel file was in the same directory as my Jupyter notebook, so that's why I simply typed the name of the file. Yeah, you can import and export data from an SQL server, provided that you have to simply type the inside this pd.read CSV function, just simply type the connection string for that particular server and along with the database. So my connection string is connection string will be some sort of like this, and the server name of my particular laptop server and the database. So for example, adventure works. So yeah, you can simply use read.csv function, and inside the argument of the read.csv function, you can simply provide the connection string of that particular SQL server database. Okay. Same will be in the case of MongoDB data. So for folks who want to import MongoDB data into Pandas, you can simply provide the connection string of the database in the read CSV function. Okay. Uh, any more questions related to importing file? What all things we have discussed in Pandas and all? So in the next weekend, what we can do is we can just we'll be quickly covering what all transformation functions that we have left in Pandas, and probably in the next weekend itself, we are going to take a file from Kaggle or any competition, and then we'll try to perform some exploratory data analysis or data cleaning on top of that. Okay, exploratory data analysis. exploratory data analysis, we have to have a look at matplotlib and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll try to clean that particular data because yeah. So if you want to practice some data cleaning and data transformations, you can just simply take some Kaggle data or analytics with their data and just perform some data cleaning on top of that data. Resource and materials for the IPython notebooks will be provided soon in your respective Canvas account, so no need to worry about that. Any more questions? Okay, so let's meet next weekend. Okay, till then, bye and take care and enjoy your weekend. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye.